Good morning. Good morning. And Happy New Year to all. Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Church here in Plano, Texas. My name is Reverend Dr. Aija Duelm, and I am the minister of this congregation, and I'm so glad to see all of you here. Thank you for joining us in person, venturing out in this breezy weather, and welcome to all who are joining us online today and watching us from a hopefully warmer and more cozier place than being on the road. We are a congregation that strives to be inclusive, and we welcome all people that come to our doors. We welcome all of our identities, all of our complexities and situations in life, because we welcome your whole self, even when it is not fully assembled yet. Because we all are work in progress, we all are growing and developing, and we recognize that and we celebrate that. That's the beautiful thing about human existence, that life is unfolding. We are unfolding and growing, and each one of us is yet to know who will we be the next day or in the near future or further down the line. That's where that joy of possibilities lies. Today we will focus on the seeds for the new year. That's the title. But what we will look back at what seeds were planted a long time ago that brought us to this place today where we are. We will hopefully see how they have grown and flourished among us. And these seeds are still, as amazing as they are growing right now, they are still in the process of growing among us, and we're still taking care of those things. And then we will have a special moment today, because some seeds that were planted 50 years ago. This year is a special year for us. We are turning 50. So what we will hear today is, later in the service, one of our founding members, Joe Barlow, will share with us about the beginnings of this church, how this church was started, what seeds were planted then, and it's an amazing story if you haven't heard it. Then we will also consider what seeds we still would like to plant. Maybe there's still something more that we would like to grow here, grow in our own lives maybe. So that's what we will talk about today. I'm glad you're here. Wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome here.
Betsy Friauf will be our chalice lighter today.
This message is by Lisa Doege. For the new year, just days old, beginning today, always beginning, we light our chalice, symbol of faith, perseverance, and hope, in astonished thanksgiving and irrepressible praise. For beginnings that emerge out of endings, appear amidst continuity, become visible in hindsight, we light our chalice, symbol of faith, perseverance, and hope, in astonished thanksgiving and irrepressible praise, for all the times and all the ways we have begun anew together. We light our chalice, symbol of faith, perseverance, and hope, in astonished thanksgiving and irrepressible praise.
A covenant is a promise that we make with one another about the way we will walk together as a community and a congregation. Please join me in reminding ourselves of this promise. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is our goal.
This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another.
Please be seated. As I promised earlier, you will hear about the beginnings of this church. And Joe Barlow, come on up. He is, together with Nancy, one of our few founding members, and he witnessed it all. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. As you have all heard this morning, next month, February 9th, is the 50th year anniversary of the founding of this congregation. And across this year, you're going to hear from various members of this congregation about the early years and the things they experienced here. Suzanne Nicholson, Nancy, my wife, and I are the three remaining founding members of this organization. And so this morning I've been asked to give you some of my memories of the beginning of this organization. I'm going to do that, but first I'm going to briefly tell you why Nancy and I became Unitarian Universalist and why we stayed. Both are very simple. We came for our children and we stayed for our friends. Our first child was born in St. Louis, and Nancy and I began to think about how we wanted to raise our children, and we knew that we did not want them exposed to the religions of our youth. And previously, Nancy had lived in St. Louis for 3 years during the time that she attended Barnes School of Nursing. In her off Sundays, a friend of her and she often went to the various congregational denominations in St. Louis to visit a service, and she found nothing that fit our needs. But when a colleague and his wife invited us to attend a UU church, we found it. As you see, it appeared that the principles of the UUs fit what we were looking for. Plus, it had the best choir that Nancy had heard during all of her church visits. The building had a choir loft that was up behind us and up. And after the service was over, Nancy was surprised to find the choir loft empty. So she soon discovered that the music of the day was recordings by Peter, Paul, and Mary. So I think the rest of our UU history owes an assist to Peter, Paul, and Mary. Our next UU encounter was at the UU church in Miami, Florida. At this church, we found the principles still to be the foundation of the church. Now, during my time at this church, I had a very interesting experience. I was working for Honeywell Computer Systems at the time, and we in the computer division had no knowledge, understanding, relationship with any other portion of Honeywell. We didn't even know they existed. That changed one Monday morning when I went to my office and discovered a anti-Vietnam War protest taking place in front of our building. There were about 40 to 50 people gathered there doing the normal anti-war protest. And as I made my way through the crowd to get to the office, I discovered that it consisted of 40 to 50 members of my congregation, led by the minister. So when I got inside, We inside had no idea why they were protesting a computer company, and we really didn't know what to do. So what I did was I exercised a little known and seldom used 8th principle of UUism. So, if you ever need it, use it. So our next stop was in Richardson, Texas, at the Unitarian Church in Richardson. And unfortunately, we found a portion of the congregation led by the minister had basically replaced the UU principles with a combination of the 60s slogan of sex, drugs, rock and roll, and the 70s slogan, if it feels good, do it. Not what we had signed up for. In late January 75, we and our like-minded church members initiated a vote to fire the minister. The vote failed, and he notified us that he would continue as the minister of RUC. On February 2nd, the church dissidents met and decided to leave RUC and start a new congregation. This was a traumatic event for long-term members because they could take nothing with them. None of the art they had created, none of the things they had bought for the church, nothing. It all belonged to the church. Our intent was to create a church based on the UU principles with a great religious program for the youth and the same format used by UU churches across the United States. Our first congregational meeting, 1 week later on February 9, we met in a Marriott hotel and we met all of those goals. 20 plus children in RE and 52 members attending the service. This was our original founding member signing date, but we then extended it to include any member that joined during the month of February. That resulted in 65 members becoming founding members. Our decision to leave RUC was validated a few months later when the RUC minister chose to have a stripper perform, and I mean perform, the Sunday morning service. Of course, this made the local news, and when Johnny Carson on the Tonight Show picked it up, it went national. And yes, we had to explain for months that was not us. Our first speaker was June Baker, a member of the newly formed Richardson Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. That was the first name of this congregation. And our plan to remain connected to UUism was to have a UU minister speak at least once a month, to augment that with outside speakers and member speakers. Early results provided us with a UU chaplain stationed at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, and a speaking engagement by Madeline Murray O'Hare. In the early 60s, Madeline challenged the mandatory reading of Bible verses and the Lord's Prayer in public schools. In 1963, the Supreme Court ruled to ban those mandatory readings. Madeline also, in 1963, founded the American Atheist Association. Today, this organization has over 230 affiliates nationwide. The Mormons had Joseph Smith. We had Hank Murphy. Hank, a Navy commander, was serving on the USS Missouri on September 2nd, 1945, where he observed the ceremony of the Japanese formal surrender to the Allied forces, which effectively ended World War II. Another interesting member was Colonel Orloff, and as long as I knew him, he was Colonel Orloff. Never had a first name, never heard him called by a first name. He had joined the Army at the age of 15 as a private, and during the years of 1916 and 1917, he served under Blackjack Pershing in an effort to capture Pancho Villa. They never captured him, but they did succeed in running him out of Texas. The last member I will speak about is Beatrice Tinsley, a woman with a doctorate in physics, unable to get a job in Texas. She continued her education in cosmology at UT Austin, commuting 400 miles a week. Her UT dissertation on the evolution of galaxies provided groundbreaking, and still she was proved groundbreaking, and still she was unable to get a job in Texas. In 1978, Yale University snapped her up as a professor of astronomy. She became the first female professor in the Department of Astronomy at Yale. Her UT dissertation and body of work at Yale is basically the current foundation of the study of the expanding universe. So I told you that we stayed for our friends. Now this picture, this is a recent lunch with church friends that came as a result of the November service auction. And Nancy is at the end of the table, and sitting next to her is Suzanne Nicholson, a 50-year friend. Next is Pam Reinke Walter, a 45-year friend. Next is Ann Smith, a 46-year friend. And on her right, Mina Daphne, a 42-year friend. Joe Hauser, next to her, 28-year friend. And at the table, but not seen in this photo, is Arlene Burleson, a 36-year friend, and Barbara Salvo, a 15-year friend. So sitting with Nancy is a cumulative friend years 262. That's only a portion of the friend years that she has garnered during her time with this congregation. In closing, I say, in this congregation, there are people as interesting and as accomplished as the early members of this church, and each of you have a reason why you came to UUism and why you stayed. My hope is, during the 50th year anniversary, you will share those reasons and accomplishments with each other. Thank you.
So that was the beginning of this church. And today is another beginning, the beginning of a new year, a beginning of some new adventures to look forward. And I was thinking some of us may have made resolutions for the new year, and some of us are simply ready to take whatever comes. Beginnings are often filled with mystery and also with some hopes and anticipation. Sometimes making us excited, sometimes worried. But all these beginnings are filled with possibilities. Possibilities that go beyond our imagination, our prediction skills, because we never fully know how the future will unfold. All wonderful things have their beginnings. And we just heard from Joe Barlow about the beginnings of this church. Just imagine 65 members coming together to form this church. And now we have 140 members and many visitors and guests who are coming and joining us here each Sunday. The founding members planted seeds that grew, shaping this community, forming it into a beautiful and meaningful place that continues to invite us to learn, to grow, and even plant more seeds. Throughout this year, we will have several opportunities to reflect back on the past 50 years, to see how we have grown, celebrate the accomplishments, mourn the hardships and difficulties that we encountered along the way, because not everything was smooth and joyful, just as not everything is that way in life either. And yet people in this community persevered, kept working together, kept caring for one another, and tended to this place. We have inherited some of these seeds from our predecessors. We continue to tend to what they planted here. And we also have an opportunity to plant something new, to grow something new. What will it be this year? What we would like to see grow here. So I mentioned I was going to talk about garden, and I know there are some gardeners here who are getting ready for the next gardening season in spite of the coming freeze, because we're putting the seeds in containers in our warm places in our houses to start tomatoes, pepper plants, and other plants that we are growing from seed. I had these few samples today with me, just as an illustration, as a metaphor for today's service. Have you ever wondered what is the world's largest seed? No? It is coco de mer, also known as double coconut. The seed of a palm tree that can reach about 12 inches long, weigh up to 40 pounds. One seed. Due to overharvesting, there are only 8,000 wild mature plants on the two islands, Praslin and Korea Island. They're only on those two places that they grow. The species are listed as endangered, and to protect them from going extinct, seeds in the wild and botanical gardens are strictly managed. How they are grown, how they are guarded. Sometimes they protect these seeds, put these seeds in cages to prevent poaching. That's the extremes to how it's needed to go. The palms are closely, the close relatives to these plants, coconuts, also produce seeds that are among the largest ones. However, they are only about 10 centimeters long, which is 1/3 of what these palm coconut, double coconut seeds are like. Everywhere else, when these palm trees grow, they no longer produce the huge size seeds. So it's the climate and location is important for them. How about the smallest seed? Cactus? Carrot? Tomato, could be. An orchid. There's an orchid, a phytic orchid that grows in the rainforest. And these impossibly tiny seeds are 85 micrometers long. So you may need to do some math to see how much that is in American system. But it would, according to some agricultural sources, it would take 35 million of these seeds to amount to 1 ounce. That kind of gives us some measure to imagine. If you are familiar with the biblical sources, in the Gospel according to Matthew, Jesus mentions mustard seed as the smallest of the seeds. Today we know that mustard seeds is not the smallest. There are seeds that are 20 times smaller than the mustard seeds. However, no one, including people who wrote the Gospels, knew that back then. And at that time, the mustard seed was the smallest of the seeds that was planted by farmers in that time frame, in that area. So in their mind, it was the smallest that you plant. Because this is what the text says. Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch in its branches. You may wonder how big it really grows. I think it's pretty striking to see that it can grow so huge from the small seed. There are different kinds of mustard seeds. There's white mustards, there are brown mustards, and then the one that Jesus was referring to is the black mustard, and it can grow almost 7 feet tall. Plenty big for a bird to make a nest there. So I guess do not judge the plant by its seed. Those of us who are gardeners know that growing seeds is not a very predictable endeavor. Some seeds would not sprout when we want them to. Some seeds would come up in the weirdest of places and the weirdest of times. Hope Jaron says this, and it's a pretty long quote. A seed knows how to wait. Most seeds wait for several years before starting to grow. A cherry seed can wait for 100 years with no problem. What exactly each seed is waiting for is known only to that seed. Some unique trigger combination of temperature, moisture, light, and many other things is required to convince a seed to jump off the deep end and take its chance, to take its one and only chance to grow. A seed is alive while it waits. Every acorn on the ground is just as alive as the 300-year-old oak tree that towers over it. Neither the seed nor the old oak is growing. They are just both waiting. Their waiting differs, however, in that the seed is waiting to flourish, while the tree is only waiting to die. When you go into a forest, you probably tend to look up at the plants that have grown so much taller than you ever could. You probably don't look down, where just beneath your single footprint sits between 100 and 1,000 seeds, each one alive and waiting. When you are in the forest, for every tree that you see, there are no less than 3 million more trees waiting in the soil, fervently wishing to be. And then when an embryo within a seed starts to grow, it basically just stretches out of its doubled over waiting posture elongating into official ownership of that form that it is assumed years ago. The hard coat that surrounds a peach pit, a sesame or mustard seed, or a walnut shell mostly exists to prevent this expansion. And just scratching the surface sometimes is enough to start the growing process. Something so hard can be so easy if you just have a little help. In the right place, under the right conditions, you can finally stretch out into what you are supposed to be. Each beginning is the end of a waiting. We are each given exactly one chance to be. Each of us is both impossible and inevitable. Unquote. So what are the seeds that we will grow this year? Maybe some seeds that were planted years ago are finally ready to sprout. Maybe the ones from 50 years ago are coming to us and ready to burst. Maybe the new ones that we would like to sprout and grow are still among us already. Maybe there are some that you need in your life the most right now. What are the things that you would like to cultivate in your life? And this is not an invitation to create a list of resolutions. I'm inviting all of us to imagine what might be the best case scenario for us this year. To name our hopes and our dreams for ourselves, our relationships, our community here, our church. For 50 years, this community has been planting and growing seeds of many kinds. Seeds of love, seeds of community, seeds of justice, seeds of learning, seeds of resilience, seeds of care. And today we are growing. We are growing not just in our understanding of this world, we are also growing in numbers. So the question for us is, who do we want to be this year? So that we invest our time, our energy, our talent and resources into things that we want to see grow and expand. This is a great opportunity for us to try out new things, to come together and build on what is already here. As we strive to live our lives at their best, to enjoy them, wisely use them, I look forward to discovering together with you the unexpected paths, the treasured moments, and above all, life's cherished wonder that just keeps us being amazed in this world. Let it be so. Amen. As we go forth, I offer these words by Aaron Stockwell Wisman. In this new year, let us be amazed. Let us search for new life and hope in our midst. Let us nurture creativity in every form. Let us be reminded that new insights of the universe are always being made. In this new year, let us be amazed. Amen. May it be so.